Um, is America ready to trade what they call democracy for cheap gas? You can call it fascism in a nutshell, and Americans understand that democracy is in dire peril, but that doesn't mean that they believe in it or give a fuck about it. Now, a recent New York Times headline had offered a perspective, or like basically a perfect perspective, epitaph for America's ailing democracy and its potential imminent demise. Voters see democracy in peril, but saving it isn't their number one priority. The details are grim. Voters overwhelmingly believe that American democracy is under threat, but they seem remarkably apathetic about that danger, and with relatively few calling it the nation's most pressing problem. But according to a poll that was conducted for the Times by Siena College, more than one-third of independent voters in the poll said that they were open to supporting candidates who reject the legitimacy of the 2020 election because economic concerns were more urgent, while 71% of voters agreed that democracy was at risk and only 7% said that was the country's most important problem, was democracy. The Times analysis confirmed to a depressing current of conventional wisdom, concluding that for many Americans, this year's midterm elections was largely defined by the rising inflation and other economic woes, reflecting a deeply rooted cynicism about government. Now, um, this particular portrait reinforces what political scientists and other experts have long known about voting and other political behavior in the country. A majority of Americans are relatively unsophisticated when it comes to understanding of politics and public policy, and they tend to be disengaged at issues beyond the few that appear to be of immediate concern to them, like their families, their communities, varying a national emergency, or crisis that demands a collective attention. Now, even that kind of increased salience does not necessarily translate into an accurate or factual understanding of the policies that we see in question. Now, for example, the COVID pandemic certainly became a major national issue, but it also fueled widespread disinformation about vaccines and public health measures. The 2020 election transfixed the nation for weeks, but Donald Trump's big lie narrative about the election has not faded away. Um, Now, there are some exceptions here, because of the experience navigating the color line, the contradictions of American democracy, and the country's long history of white of white supremacy and racism. The Black Americans as a group often tend to be more sophisticated than the white Americans in terms of political decision making. Now, many Americans are not ideological, meaning that they do not possess a coherent and consistent worldview that drives the voting and other political behavior. In this aggregate, the American people tend to take their cues from trusted elites about how they should think about politics and what they should. And I know that you're not okay. Oh, 1 second. Um, and what they should think about it, basically. Now, partisanship and voting are proxies for other social identities and not independent of them. But it's often said that the American people are increasingly polarized on politics, and that's true enough, but it fundamentally reflects on how the political elites, the opinion leaders, and a small percentage of highly politically engaged individuals drive a mass behavior. Now, with the New York Times Siena College poll and the accompanying analysis reinforces immediate financial concerns and judgments about the economy, also known as pocketbook issue. It appears to influence the political behavior for many Americans. Now, even this commonplace observation is more complicated than it appears, and the economy as a political decision tool is fraught with pitfalls and inconsistencies. In this aggregate, it may not even matter nearly as much in determining the political decision making as many experts and other observers have long assumed. Political scientists Christopher H.N. and Larry Bartels make this intervention in their book Democracy for Realists. Um, it may be by no means obvious that voters can ascertain how incumbents have performed simply by assessing changes in their own welfare. If jobs have been lost due to the recession, something is wrong, but is that the president or squatter's fault? If it is not, then voting on the basis of good or bad economic conditions may be more efficacious than killing the pharaoh when the Nile fails to flood, or voting against Woodrow Wilson when sharks attacked the Jersey Shore, or as Theodore Roosevelt put it while he coped with the panic of 1907, when the average man loses his money, he is simply like a wounded snake and he strikes right or left at anything innocent or in the reverse that presents itself as conspicuous in his mind. Even a more fundamental problem is that voters may have great difficulty accurately assessing changes in their welfare, even with respect to national economic conditions, which are highly salient and carefully monitored by professional economists in and out of government. Many Americans do not think systematically about politics, society, or the economy, and they're not likely to make any connection between an apparently abstract concept like democracy and the specific issues that they fucking care about. But it's also true that the fucking political elites, the fucking media commentators, and other fucking idiot opinion leaders who claim to believe in democracy have failed to explain to a broad public audience how and why democracy has a substantial impact on the average person's daily life. There is an even more cynical explanation. As a group, the American elites do not particularly want a well-informed and highly engaged public, such a public might pose an effective challenge to the outside power of those elites, and by doing so, it exposes how far they have imposed their narrow set of interest on public policy. Now, Chris had said in the recent essay published at Salon. This is what he had wrote in his essay. The step from dysfunctional democracy to full-blown fascism will again be a small one. The hatred for the ruling class, embodied by the establishment Republican and Democratic parties, have merged into one ruling party, and it's nearly universal. The public battling inflation at a 40-year high and that costs the average U.S. household an additional $717 a month alone, will increasingly see any political figure or political party willing to attack the traditional ruling elites as an ally. The more crude, irrational, or vulgar the attack, the more the disenfranchised rejoice. These sentiments are true here and in Europe alone, where energy costs are expected to rise by as much as 80% this winter, and an inflation rate of 10% is eating away at the income. The reconfiguration of society under neoliberalism to exclusively benefit the billionaire class, the slashing and privatization of public services, including the schools, hospitals, and utilities, along with deindustrialization, the proliferate pouring of state funds and resources into the war industry at the expense of the nation's infrastructure as social services, and the building of the world's largest prison system and militarization of police have predictable results. At the heart of the problem is a loss of faith in traditional forms of government and democratic solutions. In a recent interview at Salon, social psychologist Sean Rosenberg had offered a similar observation, saying that the Achilles heel of democracy is that the people, meaning the citizenry, do not understand the large political or governmental system and its values, and therefore they're susceptible to a populist message. He mainly attributes this to America's dysfunctional educational system, which has failed to educate the public to understand complex questions of society and politics. It's not that large parts of the American public are inherently evil or bad. It's just that when they look around the world, they don't understand what's going on, or what they're seeing. They don't understand why it's so hard to solve some of these problems that we're facing, and why it's so hard to govern, and why they're supposed to respect people who they believe are obviously wrong. Right-wing populism offers simple answers and simple solutions, and simple characterizations of what the world is like. Donald Trump, Ron DeSantis, and other such Republican leaders are offering that vision and those answers, not really. Now, meanwhile, members of the media and the political classes often make the error of generalizing from their own experience and knowledge to the public as a whole, now leading to a whole range of incorrect assumptions, the misguided conclusions, and overall misunderstandings. Thus, we get the perpetual of real or feigned shock and surprise from pundits, the commentators, and mainstream political leaders when faced with the Republican Party's fascist campaign against American democracy. The political scientist Jonathan Renshon addressed this in an interview with Politico last June. Absolutely nothing is stopping elites from using the same public opinion data that the academics and the public has access to, and yet we still see compelling evidence that the elites misread the public opinion, either because of stereotypes that they hold about on the public, or they're overweighting their own preferences, or the unequal exposure to particular constituencies of special interest. As we saw back in the 2020 presidential election campaign, it's also not unusual for politicians to discount or dismiss public opinion polls when they don't like the results that they're seeing. But in a large sense, this is not surprising. There are many domains in which access to more or more accurate information doesn't necessarily reduce the tendency for bias to creep into our judgments. Um, Now, in total, the recent New York Times poll offers further evidence that the American people may claim to be concerned about democracy. It's fundamentally unclear as to the cause of the crisis, and they have no idea what to fucking do about it. It's actually worse, and that many Americans don't even pretend to care about democracy, but they are more concerned about lower prices for gas and groceries, and they have no problem trading away their rights and freedoms for the promise of ending inflation, which the Republicans have no policy to end inflation, and they have no plan to end that. In a similarly dark vein, a new CBS news poll finds that 63% of the likely Democratic voters believe that a functioning democracy is more important than a strong economy, but those numbers are more than reversed among the Republicans. 70% of Republicans want a strong economy, and whatever that means, above a functioning democracy. It's not hyperbolic or metaphorical to describe those numbers as a textbook example of how democracy gradually and then more swiftly rots away and succumbs to fascism. But the naive faith that it cannot happen here is severely misplaced because it's happening right now. Um, so basically, um, if you like the video, you can give the video a like and subscribe to my channel, RBW King. You can also hit the notification bell so you'll be notified when a new video comes out. And if you want to support my work even further, you can donate to my Patreon link, which you can find in the About section of YouTube. And for as little as a few bucks a month, your donation can help go a long way, and thanks for listening.